Born in Newcastle in 1941, singer Eric Burdon had performed at Blues Incorporated before joining the Alan Price Rhythm and Blues Combo, a band made up of musicians from the working class northeast.
The Animals really became the Animals in 1962 when Hilton Valentine joined on guitar. Eric Burdon had this incredible sort of blues howl. Alan Price was a very, very talented musician, very virtuosic. And at the same time, Newcastle, being a port town, had a lot of these blues and jazz records coming in.
I like the way you walk. I like the way you talk.
From the very first stages of the Animals, there was something different about them. Musically, they had Alan Price's keyboards and piano, which was often almost classical. It was very, very lavish. And they had the guitarist sound, which was a British R&B sound. But on top of this, you had Eric Burdon's voice. His voice was an extraordinary thing. It sounded like a very old American bluesman. And this was what made the Animals stick out instantly.
The Animals got a residency in Hamburg, where they were basically a backing band for the touring bluesmen who were doing the circuit. So they ended up playing with Sonny Boy Williamson and John Lee Hooker.
All these blues greats who had often been sort of forgotten in America. They weren't really getting audiences, and they suddenly came to Europe and there's this hankering for them.
By the time they returned from Hamburg, these very disparate musicians were an absolutely super efficient, super well-drilled band.
Baby, can I take you home? Baby, let me take you home. I'll love you all my life. You get that, I'll teach you right. If you just let me take you home.
The Animals were promptly signed by EMI. Their debut single reached number 21 in the UK charts.
Do anything in this God almighty world if you just let me dance with you.
Because the British R&B scene wasn't fully formed at this point, the Animals could go their own way and mould the scene in their own image.
Baby, let me take you home. I'll love you all my life. You can bet I'll treat you right if you just let me take you home.
Eric Burdon would talk over this guitar music, and it was almost a throwback to a lot of what the American blues artists were doing.
When I saw you, baby, I couldn't ignore you, and I wanted you for my girl. And when you said yeah, I just couldn't care about anybody else in this world alone.
House of the Rising Sun was a traditional folk song, and it had been covered before, but the way that Alan Price rearranged it for the Animals was completely different.
There is a house in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy. And God, I know I'm one.
This is where Alan Price, as genius, came into play. He totally rearranged this song, and obviously it was no coincidence that his piano was right at the front of it. But his arrangement made it deep, it made it dark, and it made it big. It was a British and American #1.
The Animals released their first self-titled debut album in 1964.
The Animals' debut album was mainly made up of their versions of R&B standards, and it went to number 6 in the UK and to number 7 in the US.
Here are the Animals.
In 1964, the band made their debut on The Ed Sullivan Show, but it said that they couldn't really hear themselves because of the screaming girls, of course, part of that so-called British invasion.
Baby, do you understand me now? If sometimes I seem to be mad,
People in America hadn't really heard this kind of music before, of white men bringing their blues and their jazz back to them.
I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood.
Their follow-up, Animal Tracks, was recorded very, very quickly. They were an incredibly busy band and they didn't really have a lot of material, and certainly they hadn't got into their songwriting stride. But the American version spawned 2 major hits. Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood was number 3 in the UK and number 15 in the US. And We Got to Get Out of This Place was number 2 in the UK and number 13 in the United States.
We gotta get out of this place. If it's the last thing we ever do, we gotta get out of this place. Girl, there's a better life for me and you.
We Got to Get Out of This Place encapsulated certain things that were going on at the time, almost accidentally. Vietnam was beginning to happen, so that was a very popular song with the troops who were stationed there. But also there was a sense too that when the Animals did it, that it was about Newcastle. It was about leaving this industrial city in a corner of England to break America.
See his hair been turning gray. He's been working and slaving his life away. Yes, I know. He's been working, yeah. He's been working, yeah. Baby, do you understand me now? Sometimes I feel a little mad, but don't you know that no one alive can always be an angel? When things go wrong, I seem to be bad. I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood.
The Animals' second album spawned Please Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, which went to number 3 in the UK and 15 in the US. But during the recording of Animal Tracks, Alan Price had decided to end his involvement with the band.
Alan Price, who is the co-founder of the band, really, was having a very difficult relationship with Eric Burdon. They didn't get on. And at the same time, he had a fear of flying. And this is a problem if you're in an extremely successful band who's expected to fly all the time all over the world.
Easy rider, easy rider, keep on riding.
In 1966, the Animals became Eric Burdon and the Animals, and the drummer John Steele left, and according to Chas Chandler, the business affairs were a complete shambles. So he got fed up, and of course he left to become Jimi Hendrix's manager. And they continued in a psychedelic vein with Eric Burdon very much taking control, but this is really the end of the Animals.
It's hard really to overstate the importance of the Animals in British music in general, and particularly in British R&B. They were the ones who popularised it first. They were the ones who took the music of the United States back to the United States. And then, in the 60s, what an extraordinary achievement that was.
The legacy of the British R&B scene is absolutely massive. If you look at all of the people that went on to form the bedrock of British rock and roll music, that made the biggest contribution to British music throughout the 60s and 70s, were part of the British R&B boom.